MapKit. MapKit is the entire framework, all the classes you need to work with maps. So this is the example, this is the application we are going to develop. There is a company, probably a fictitious company, may not be, called Mary Transport Services. They do freight delivery. They want to see the location of all of their trucks or drivers on a map and be able to communicate or interact with them. This is the problem you're going to solve today. Not a very expensive and very detailed amount of work, but something what you're seeing there on the map, that is actual screenshot from the app you're going to develop. So it shows the locations of the drivers. Their names are also below, right below the bubble. And what we want is this. Some possible interactions, like for example, when you're looking at a map, and let's say you have searched for Mexican restaurants, and on the map you see 10 such bubbles. You touch a bubble, something will pop up and it will give you options like to show you the address, maybe there's a phone number, the phone number is touchable, clickable, so you can call the restaurant, make a reservation, or you can open the website. Those are all possible interactions. So in this app, in the transport services app, the possible interactions are you could view the details of the current shipment that the driver is carrying or bringing. You could view the details of the driver. For example, when did he start his shift? How much time is still remaining? Is he going to come back on time, etc., etc. You can communicate with the driver. Maybe you can message them. Maybe you can call them. You can send a message saying the customer just said that they're going on a lunch break, so you better stop and have a cup of coffee because they'll be closed or whatever it is. Right? All those are possible interactions. And an app like this will require two parts. So one part is where what we were looking at, you see the location of all the drivers. But how does that app know where a driver is? Right? So let's call that the company app. Right? So this company app needs to know where the location of drivers, where each driver is. And each driver in turn needs to have what we would call a driver app. And the job of these drivers, so there will be many, each driver will have one on his or her phone, right? The job of this app is to constantly keep on transmitting the location, the current coordinates to somewhere on the internet, a server. So all of these will transmit their location. And this server will keep the updated, most up-to-date location. And whenever this company app is open, it will request from the server, tell me the location of all the drivers. And then it will keep on requesting it at a frequency you choose, every second, every 5 seconds, every half a minute, whatever it may be. So we need a company app and a driver app. So this is how Uber also works. How many of you know that Uber has two apps? Driver app and a passenger app. So as a passenger, you use a passenger app. But as a driver, you use the other app. So that's how you get. So that's the same kind of philosophy. So this is what we will develop. We will develop the company app that allows calling any of the drivers at the touch of a button displayed next to the location. So this will be the limited scope of our work today. We don't have a lot of time to do too many different things, but we'll cover all the basics that you can extend. So a company app will show the location of all the drivers, and from the location you will be able to touch that and make a phone call to the driver. So we'll get started, and this is how we'll do it. We'll create a single view app, and we'll add the map view, etc. Right? Okay. And this you can submit for two marks. So that's what this is going to be worth, this app. So let's start with Xcode. You will create a new Xcode project, and as before, as usual, we'll use our names in the project name. So give the project name as your first name underscore last name underscore Berry Transport Services, the name of the company that you're working for. And make sure the language is selected as Swift and user interface is storyboard. Otherwise, you won't see the storyboards. Okay, once you have done that, once you have typed the name in, say next and choose the location where it's going to be saved. So it should show up. So then go to your view controller and right below the line where it says import UI kit, you will say import MapKit. Very important. Without this line, you'll get lots of errors because none of the classes that you need for working with the maps will be found. So just import the MapKit. Okay, and now we will go to the storyboard. Perfect. Okay, from the library of objects, you type map to search for the map view. It will show up as MapKit view. Drag and drop it somewhere in the center of your screen there and run your app and see what happens. So you should see exactly what I'm seeing here. North America, the entire continent here. And this is an actual map. You can work with it. You can pan, you can zoom in, zoom out, whatever you want. But obviously this is just a start. Let's customize it. Let's expand it to cover the whole screen and add other things that we need. So leave it like that for now. Add a label to the top. From your library of objects, drag and drop a label so it snaps to the margin and the center like that. And we will center the text in it, and I'm going to increase the size a bit and change this label to the name of the app. Berry Transport Services. Okay. Add another label, this time to the bottom. And what is this app going to say? Yes. By, you put your name. Okay, I forgot to center it. I will center it and bring it back to the center. All right. Question now. So we have got three things there. I want the map to take up this entire space not taken by the label. How can we do that? Yes, there. You have something to say? No. What can we use to make this map view fill up? See, there is a lot of white space here and here. So I want, see, one thing is I could just drag it like this, right? Yes, that's the word I'm looking for. We want constraints. So basically, you could do it manually, but then this app, when you flip it, let's see. Let me show you what will happen. Let's say if I do it manually, yeah, let's see when we change the orientation, what happens. You see? Problem, right? We don't like that. So what we will do is, we will start with the way it was, leave it like this, right? And we'll add constraints. So what we want in terms of constraints is, we want this thing to always remain at the top, and maybe we can expand it so its edges are touching the two edges. So basically, while this is selected, click on the constraints, add new constraints. This is what you should see. These 4 lines, they should all be dotted. So make the top one solid by clicking on it, and make sure it says 0. If it doesn't say 0, you don't need to even click on it, you just change the number. So this 79 I'm going to change to 0 and see what happens. This line will become solid. So will this. Okay. And we'll leave this as constraint to margin. So basically these 3 constraints will make sure that this thing is always stuck to the top, and it's wide, just as wide as this screen is, regardless of the orientation or the device. So with this box looking like this, these 3 lines are solid, these 3 numbers are 0, and constraint to margins is checked. You should see here add 3 constraints. If you see add 3 constraints, click on it. We'll do the same thing, but the mirror of that on the lower label. This time we'll choose the right and the left and the bottom, all 3 to be 0, and constraint to margins. So that way the bottom label will always stick to the bottom, and the top label will always, even when we rotate the device. Once again, you should see add 3 constraints, and you add it, and not much will change in terms of the view until we do this one. So now select your map view, click on it, and then say add constraints. Okay. And now we will say 0 to all 4 numbers, and we'll uncheck this constraint to margins. So what that will do is, for the top and the bottom, instead of sticking it to the margin, it will stick it to the label, the nearest neighbor. So like this, all 4 zeros, all 4 selected, add 4 constraints. This is what your view should look like. Let's see if I rotate it, what happens. Perfect, right? That's what we wanted. So now you run the app and see what happens. You should see that the entire screen is filled up. Okay, how many of you are having problems with the layout? Okay, let's do it again. So those who have got it working, don't do anything. Those who have a problem, just follow what I'm doing again. So those who have it working, don't do all this that I'm about to do. So first thing you do is, you click on this triangle, resolve auto layout issues. Well, first I have to select a controller. So let me select this controller, view controller. And then you click on that and say clear constraints. So whatever constraints you have that have a problem, they will get cleared. Okay, so all the constraints are gone, but because this was the this is what it looked like before that, it continues to look like that. So we'll do this again. How to clear constraints? To clear constraints, you click on the view controller and then this triangle and clear constraints. Okay, so 3 things you need to do. You need to fix this top one to the top. So select this top label and then click on these constraints, the square box here, add new constraints, and these three numbers should all be 0. If they're not 0, type 0. If it's already 0, click on that constraint to highlight it, to make it solid. This one should not be selected. And then you say constraint to margins, because you want this thing to go to the margin, not to the top of the screen, otherwise it will go under the notch. Okay, and then you say add 3 constraints. So it will add, and see these constraints appear here. Take the bottom one and do the opposite. So select these 3, the bottom, left and right. These numbers should all be 0 and constraint to margins should be selected. Okay, then you say add 3 constraints and those are done. And now for this one, you select all 4 to be zeros and make sure all 4 constraints are active. These lines are solid and it does not say constraint to margins. You want it to fill up the whole screen, otherwise it will leave some gap on the left or on the right. You don't want any of that as well. Add 4 constraints. That's what you should see, and as soon as you do that, you will see this. Okay, now you run and you will see this. So again, see, it is showing me the entire continent, and that's the default behavior of the simulator. It detects your location and shows you the whole continent if you're not specific about how much to show, where to center it, etc. Still have problems? Okay, if you have problems, just wait, I'll help you in the break. For now, let's continue. So now what we want is, we want to center this. How do we want it to look? It's a company called Barrie Transport Services. Presumably their trucks operate mostly in Barrie. So what you want is, when the app opens, it should look something like this. Maybe something like this, right? Barrie, the city of Barrie and some surrounding areas. So what we need is to center it on Barrie and decide how much to show. Okay. So who can tell me the GPS coordinates of Barrie? Just search in Google. So we'll go to Google and we'll search GPS coordinates, and this is what you will get: 44.3894 and 79.6903. Why does it say north and west?
From north it's 44 and from west.
Why? What is north about a coordinate? So the Earth has, when we look at the globe, you must have seen there are latitudes and then there are longitudes, right? So this thing here is the equator, and similarly there is one, the largest longitude is the, well, they're all the same, but the one that passes through the origin, 0 degrees, that's in England, in Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, you must have heard of it. So that forms your origin, the equator and the meridian. This is your 0, 0 point. Everything above that is north, everything below that is south, and similarly west and east. So what this is doing is, this is telling you Barrie is 44 degrees north, so you go 44 degrees north and 79 degrees west. Why is this important? Because the absolute number, as soon as you say west, you are saying that it is actually negative. You see, west is minus. So this quadrant, everything is positive. What about this?
Minus, no, plus, minus, plus, minus,
Plus minus. X is positive, y is negative. Here it is the opposite, minus plus. And here both are negative. So when you enter your GPS coordinates into your app, you need to provide proper sign. Otherwise, instead of Berry, you will be somewhere in China or Russia or wherever. Right? So that's what we will use. And one helpful hint, if you don't know, don't remember how to do that, look for this. latlong.net is typically the first result. Whenever you search for GPS coordinates, you go in there and it will tell you positive or negative. So that's where I'm going to get this information from. I'm going to copy it from here. And we will add it to our Xcode. So we'll go to the view controller. And this is the setup. Here there is a function called view did load, and this is where it says do any additional setup after loading the view. So this is our additional setup, where to open the map, how much to show, right? So we're starting with Berry GPS. Okay, so so that's my latitude, and this is going to be my longitude. So now I've got this much. Okay. Okay. So what we've got is the Berry coordinates, and what we want is we want the map when it opens to be centered on this. So how do we do that? Let's find out. So it's a good idea from time to time. You may need to do this, like whenever you're using a new API, a new framework, you will need to read the documentation. And this is the documentation of the view that we are using, map view, MK map view. MK is MapKit. Just like we had UI button, UI label, user interface, kit in the same way. So this, if you read the documentation, you can use this class as is to display map information and to manipulate the map contents from your application. The second line is exactly what we want to do. You can center the map on a given coordinate, specify the size of the area you want to display, and annotate the map with custom information. This is exactly what we are doing today. We want to center the map on Berry coordinates. We want to decide how much to show, and then annotate. We want to show the locations of all the drivers. All of that is what we are doing now. So let's start with this. So what does it mean? When you initialize a map view, you specify the initial region for that map to display by setting the region property of the map. So the map view has a property called region. Area currently displayed by the map view. How do we set it? It's an object of type MK coordinate region. A rectangular geographic region centered around a specific latitude and longitude. So what is this? So this has ways of creating it. You can create a region by creating an empty region and then specifying its properties, or initializing whatever we need through the initializer itself. You can specify a map rectangle, or you can specify the center coordinates and the span. The span is how much of it to show. Also, distance we could use in meters. So this is a double CL location alias. So this is the one we can use. We can initialize it by specifying a center coordinate. So from whatever we got from the Google search for berry, we can use that and create a location coordinate 2D object, and then specify how much of latitude and longitude to show. So first step is to create this location coordinate. So this is again this is just a struct, it's not a class, and its initializer takes two parameters, latitude and longitude. So we'll go to Xcode now and we'll say let berry location. So this was called CL location coordinate 2D. Now don't look at the screen and type everything I'm typing, because I don't do that. See, I started typing this, I just said CL and I got this suggestion. You may not get it right away, but you keep on typing the rest of it, CL location, until you see this, and then you just double click it. That way, one, less chance of a typo, and two, less typing. So just double click when you see that. And once you've got the class name right, if you type open bracket, it will give you all the initializers. So choose the one. We are using this second one, which takes two parameters, and you just double click on it. Look at the screen from time to time as you are typing. Otherwise, you end up doing a lot of typing. There is a lot more chance of typos, and it's just more work. So as soon as you select it, you will see that these two things in blue will appear. So first one is highlighted. That's the latitude. So just start typing. While it is in blue, you start typing berry, and it will give you the what do you want? You want the first or the second? So we want the second one here, latitude. So we choose that. And then you press tab and it highlights the next one. And now you go with the longitude here, berry. So this gives us the center coordinates for the map. This is the location of the city of Berry. Okay. Now what is next? We saw that we needed the center and we need to specify the distance, how much we want to show, how much of the map. But what was the name of the class? Let's go back and find out. So this one, MK coordinate region, and we will use this one, center and distance in meters. Okay. So let MK, see, I'm typing. I won't type the entire word. As I'm typing, it's giving me suggestions. I want this one, the second one. I'll just double click it. And then as I type open bracket, it will give me the options. How do you want to initialize it? So I want the one that takes distance and the center coordinate. So double click that and it will give you this. These are called placeholders. You know what is in gray and blue right now? Blue is the one that is active. If I start typing, it will get replaced. I'll say berry location. At that also, I don't have to type the whole thing. I start typing and all the suggestions come. And then I press tab and now I want meters, longitudinal and latitude. So let's say we want how much distance from the berry, the center, we want to see. Do we want to see 10 kilometers, 20, 30, 40? You specify it in meters here. So let's say we want to see 40 kilometers. So we'll just say 40,000. And now this is basically what will happen is your device has a certain aspect ratio. So both of them will not take place because the map has a certain scaling. So you can't say show 10 in this and 10 in this, but your screen is taller, so the map will get stretched. No, it will choose appropriately. but let's just put 40,000 in both. So regardless of the orientation of the device, it will choose, something that is more appropriate. Okay, now I know the region. How do I tell the app to apply this to the map view? If you had a label and you wanted to change its text, what do you need?
Attribute.
Huh?
Attribute.
Attribute. You need to change an attribute, but how do you do it? Right click and so it's in your storyboard. Now you're from the code, you want to change it. What do you need in the code?
Another function.
No, an outlet. Right? If you have a label, you want to change it, you need an outlet. We need an outlet to the map view. Otherwise, how are we going to tell what to do here with this region? So go to your storyboard and open your assistant editor. Assistant editor, you want to see where it is? Okay. So when your storyboard is open, look for these lines. Click on those lines and choose assistant. So it will open your view controller on the right and the storyboard on the left. And as before, we'll create some blank lines here and make a comment. Outlets. And then you right click and drag it here from the map view. And this is what you should see. You should see it's creating a connection of type outlet, and the object type is MK map view. If you see something other than MK map view, you have a problem. Right click and drag. Okay, so this will call it just map view. Let's call it map view, small m, capital V, and connect. This will create an outlet here. So just call it map view, you will get an outlet. And now I will get rid of the storyboard and just work with the view controller again. So now we have this variable called map view. It's an outlet. So we'll say map view dot set region. And this is the region we have created. And don't, again, once again, I will tell you, don't type everything. Let Xcode do the work for you. It gives to you suggestions, double click. Berry region is our first variable, and the second parameter it takes is animated, whether by default it loads the entire continent of North America. So by setting this animated variable to true, you're saying that okay, when you start with that, show some the zooming in as an animation. All right, now you run your app and see what happens. Oh, this is what it shows up with the distance we gave, 40,000. Looks too big, the area, right? Let's reduce it from 40,000 to 20,000 and see what happens. Okay, it is bigger than before, but It still looks too big to me. Let's go with 10,000. Okay, this looks good. So this is how your app will open at this point. It is showing the city of Perry, wherever the head office is of the company, you can show that and stuff like that. So now we are at a point where we have set the region. Now we want to show the drivers, right? And since we don't have the driver app, we'll just make up some driver locations, some names, etc. Create a, what do we need to create? So this, whatever we are seeing is our view. We have a view controller, the code. What are we missing? Model. So the model is where whatever this is doing, right? It's sending all the data to the server. So actually it's the model's job to get all that information and keep it up to date. So we are going to pretend that it's talking to a server when it's actually not, and we will create all that information. So we will create a model class. How do we do that? Right click on the folder. So on the yellow folder, and then add a new Swift file, and this time we'll use our names in the file name. So use your initials and the company initials, BTS, Berry Transport Services, and model. So your initials underscore BTS underscore model is what your model class will be called. And then once it's done, you say create, and it will create an empty file. So let's declare a class here with the same name as the file. What I need here is driver information, and since the scope of our app is very limited, we only want to show the name of a driver and have a phone number available to call that person. So we can work with, like last week we worked with a structure. We had a pair of phrases in English and a French. You could create a structure and hold things like driver's name, driver's phone number, driver's picture, and whatever else, their shifts, the days they work. Or you could create a database. All those things are possible. Here we'll just go with a very simple structure. We'll use a dictionary. We'll use drivers' names and a phone number. Like this. So we will create some random driver names. And you can add anything. So just you can make up the names, you can make up whatever you want. I'm just doing here to have some information to be displayed. We'll add 7 of these. Okay, so we got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 7 drivers and 7 fictitious phone numbers. You can write 8 or 9. No, write some more. Just copy and paste or change the name or something. So you'll see more of those locations on your map. I don't know if you guys know or not, but anytime a phone number starts with 555, it's a fake phone number. This is what they use in the movies. If you watch a Hollywood movie, the phone numbers always have an area code, then 555, and then a number. That's because these are all made up numbers. So that by accident they don't use a real number. This is the practice they follow. So we've got this set up. What we'll do now is so I'll leave the model on the left if you guys are still looking at it, and I'll open the view controller on the right. So what do we need in order to be able to use the model? An object. Where? In the view controller. We need an object in the view controller to be able to use the model. So that's the first thing we'll do. We'll create a section here called class variables, and we'll add the model. So we'll call the variable just model, and then you use the class name you created and put an empty initializer there. That's the line I've just added. So here you'll use the name that you gave, your initials, not mine. So now we have access to this dictionary of drivers. We want to iterate over it. What do we use for iterating over something? A for loop. So in Swift it is really easy. You just say for, and let's say we want to iterate over this dictionary. So we will give it a variable name for driver in model this object dot drivers, and then open curly bracket and press enter, and it adds the closing curly bracket for you. Okay, so this will iterate over all the drivers. So this is the region that we see in the app. I want to give all of those 7 drivers a random location, right? So now this is where in our map the center is where the city of Barrie is. So I want now 7 randomly, and let's say this is our entire map that is visible. So I want to imagine you're looking at a board and you're throwing darts randomly. So you want 7 of those. So let's say one falls here, one falls here, one falls here, etc. So how do I do that using a program? Yes, you're on the right. So I know these coordinates. I can generate 2 random numbers. Add one to the latitude, the other one to the longitude, and I have got a random coordinate. So that random number needs to go from a certain range, right? So that's what we want. So let's create 2 random numbers. So in any language, any programming language, if you want to create a random number, you will have access to a native function. Like in JavaScript, it's called math.random. In Java, it is something similar. So basically, Swift has the same thing. You can create a random number, and when I say double dot random, it gives me 4 choices. I'm going to choose the second one, which is the range. Okay, and here, see, the location coordinates work in degrees. So basically, what we did was we set our map in meters, whatever, 10,000 meters as the distance. But yes, take it.
After that, I have a question.
You have a question? Okay. So what we need is this coordinate we have in degrees, 44.389 and minus 79.690. So this range within degrees we need to determine so that we can create those locations. And you can do the calculation if you want, but what we will do is we'll provide this range as minus 0.05 to plus 0.05. That's the amount of degrees, and we don't actually even have to calculate. We can play around with it as we do this. So we'll say that generate a random number in this range. So what we are saying is that if this is in latitude, it is 44.389, go up to 0.05 up in the positive direction and 0.05 in the negative, and then whatever number you get to add it to that. So that will be our next step. And similarly, we'll generate a second random number for the other axis. Okay. So that will give us 2 random numbers to add to the location, and now we'll create another such location object, this. So let's do that. Let random location equal to, as you start typing CL location, it will give you, by now it remembers. So if you just say CL, it will give you this option, CL location coordinate 2D. Just double click it and then open bracket and choose the second initializer. You don't have to type anything out of this. Double click that, and now our latitude is going to be Barry latitude plus the random number plus one of the random numbers, let's say random 1. And for the longitude we'll do the same, Barry longitude plus random 2. So this is the coordinate of one of the drivers. Inside loop, each iteration it will generate one such coordinate, and we will set a pin at that. So the question is, how do we put a pin at this location? So to answer this question, you would typically do a Google search. You'll say, how do I show an annotation? It will give you some documentation, some Stack Overflow answer, and you will find out how to do it. That's typically how you will learn how to use these new APIs. So what it will eventually lead you to is, in our original this documentation, there is an entire section called annotation, annotating the map. Supports the ability to annotate the map with custom information. How do we do that? Any object that conforms to MK annotation protocol. And one such object is actually MK point annotation. So this is the protocol. What is a protocol? It's like an interface in Java. It defines what information it contains. It needs to know what is the coordinate, title and subtitle. That's all it needs. So this is what we'll do. We'll use an object of this type, but a more specific. This is just a protocol. So we will use an object of MK point annotation. So let's create that. Let if you start typing MK point, you should see as a suggestion MK point annotation like here. So just double click that and you will get it here. If you now we are initializing it, so if you press open brackets, it will give you all the initializers available to you. There is only one, which is the basically a blank initializer. Okay, so now we need to start setting its properties. So we say annotation dot coordinate equal to the random location we have just generated. Okay, and annotation dot title, those were the three properties: coordinate, title and subtitle. So what are we iterating over? We are iterating over the names of drivers with their phone numbers. So here we'll say driver dot key. Key, we remember we created a dictionary, key value pairs. The keys were the names and the values were the phone numbers. So we'll set the title as the key and the subtitle as the value. At this point, we are ready to add this annotation to our map view. So say map view dot add annotation. If you start typing, it will give you the suggestion. So just choose the add annotation, not the plural, the singular. And here you just, as the argument, you pass the annotation. And now run your app and see if you see any pins appearing on the map.